June 1944. Twice that week, Mama sent me to the Hinkle sisters' house to borrow newspapers. She wanted to keep up on the polio news. Tuesday's paper said an 8-year-old boy had died of polio, and it told how there were 19 cases in the county, seven more since last Sunday. In Thursday's paper, we read that a camp in Hickory was going to become an emergency hospital for polio victims. We also read that 3 doctors from Yale University had came to Hickory to investigate our epidemic. Imagine that. The next Tuesday, Bobby came down with a cold, which scared Mama half to death. He sneezed and she stopped sweeping on the front porch. She pulled Daddy's big red hanky from her apron pocket and held it to Bobby's nose. "Blow, honey," she said. Then she stuffed the hanky in Bobby's pocket, sat down on the rocking chair, and pulled him up into her lap. She rested her chin on Bobby's head, and I seen again just how much that boy looked like her. They had the same shiny brown curls and deep red lips, and both had brown eyes that squinted nearly shut when they laughed, but neither one of them was laughing now. "I can't recall him being around anyone who with a cold," Mom said, her rocking chair making a fast, irritating sound on the wood porch floor, and it was making me edgy. I knew exactly what she was thinking. "Stop worrying, Mama," I said. "A cold ain't the same thing as polio, and he ain't been around nobody since that had polio either, so you can just put that out of your mind." Mama sighed. "I know," she said. She used a toe to slow the rocking chair down. "You're right, of course." Bobby curled up on Mama's lap and snuggled into her like he was trying to crawl inside of her. But Bobby had been in Mama's heart since before he was born. I can still remember how she'd walk around hugging her big tummy with her hands and getting so lost in her happy thoughts that she'd forget which scrubbing job she was working on. It seemed like she knew she was finally getting herself a man-child. But this week, what with taking care of Bobby, Mama didn't hardly scrub a thing. She smeared vapor rub on his chest and kept it covered with a warm, wet cloth. She made him stay in bed for 2 days, where she sung to him and told him Bible stories and played with him and his wooden farm animals. And it seemed like Bobby's cold went away in no time. Thursday morning, when I woke up, he was standing outside spinning the tire swing with Pete inside and falling down laughing when Pete couldn't walk straight afterwards. "Bobby looks like he's all better," I said to Mama while I ate my gravy biscuit. She poured soap powders into the dishpan and fixing to scrub down the kitchen, but I could hear her sigh of relief all the way across the room. "Yeah, he's back to pestering that dog again, so I reckon he'll be fine," she said. "Good," I said. "He can help us bring in the potatoes." After breakfast, I gave Ida, Ellie, and Bobby a warning. "We're turning into farmers in 5 minutes, and I want you to be in the garden with the bushel basket in your hand." Ida was the first to whine. "I don't want to work in the garden. Me and Ellie was going to play paper dolls." "Yeah," whined Ellie. "No," I said, "not until we get this done. These potatoes are going to rot if we don't get them out of the garden. And tomorrow we're going to pick blackberries. Then we're going to go buy sugar because the ration board said we can get our share for canning. I figured if I mentioned a trip to town, they might work harder." "I can't work," said Bobby. "I'm sick." He was carrying Pete wrapped up like a baby in a blue striped blanket. "You don't look sick to me," I said. "Pete's sick," said Bobby. "He's blind in one eye and his legs is aching." "Pete's been blind in one eye ever since he tangled with that groundhog last year," I said. "And if his legs is sore, then he don't have to work. But you do. Bring that wagon when you come." Bobby was the first to show up in the garden. He was pulling the wagon, and Pete was inside of Bobby's blanket. That dog was getting plumb spoiled. Bobby hadn't let him out of his sight since Daddy went off to war. I wished a little old dog could take Daddy's place for me. I had to holler for the girls to get out of the garden, and by then I had a whole row of potatoes dug and waiting to be put in baskets. Bobby didn't do a thing but mess with that dog until the girls got there. Ida showed up with a bushel basket over her head so she couldn't see where she was going. She had another basket in her hand. Ellie was empty-handed. I made the youngins put the potatoes in the baskets. Then we put the baskets in the wagon and pulled it to the dirt cellar under the back of the house. When the potatoes were unloaded, Bobby put Pete in the wagon and climbed in with him. "Giddy up, horse," he said. "Me and Pete wants a ride." So I pulled the 2 of them back to the garden. But I didn't get much work out of him after the first trip. He whined and fussed and said he hurt all over. The girls fussed too, and Ida said I was meaner than the devil himself. Listen here, I yelled. I reckon you think I'm doing this for fun. Well, I'm not. I'm doing this on account of there's a war and Daddy can't be here to look after his family, so stop bellyaching and do your part. The girls started picking up potatoes, but Bobby was collecting fluffy pink mimosa blossoms from the tree by the edge of the garden. I'm sick, he said when I called him back to the garden. He tickled Pete's nose with the mimosa flower. Pete sneezed, and Bobby giggled. See, he said, me and Pete's got a cold. If Daddy was here, he would have found a way of making work fun. But I was hot and had blisters on my hands, so I was irritable. Bobby Leroy Honeycutt, if you don't get to work, I'm going to write Daddy a letter, and I'll say a lot more than good night, sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite. I'll tell him you're a spoiled little brat that don't want to do nothing but play with the dog. Bobby started crying then, but he got up and put a few potatoes in the basket. It didn't last long. By the time the next load of potatoes was ready, he was back sitting in the dirt, scooping dry dust over Pete's tail and watching it fly when Pete wagged it off. I didn't even bother calling him to help. He was way more trouble than he was worth. After all, he was only 4 years old, and the last thing Daddy told him was to play some every day. So I guess I shouldn't be so hard on him, even if picking potatoes wasn't really that much work. By the time we got halfway to the cellar, Bobby was screaming for us to come back and get him. I just kept right on pulling that wagon. I'd have stopped. Don't you dare go after him, I said. Bobby's got 2 good legs, the same as the rest of us. But she didn't pay me no mind. Of course, Ellie followed right along after her. Soon, they was all 3 screaming. Mama came out the back porch to see what all the clamor was about, so I let her take over while I laid the potatoes on the root cellar. Next thing I knew, Mama was hollering too. I run down there to see what was the matter. Mom was trying to get Bobby to stand up, but his legs were just crumbling underneath him and his arms was floppy too. I didn't need a doctor to tell me what was wrong. Mama picked Bobby up and took him inside, and the 3 of us girls was right behind her. She turned to me and said, jump on the bicycle and go get Junior to bring the truck. He's going to take us to the emergency hospital. I pedaled that bike as fast as I could, and my heart was bumpier than that dirt road. All I could think of was how mean I was making Bobby work when he really was sick. But he didn't seem sick in the beginning. Mama checked his forehead in the morning and he didn't have no fever. And he was giggling and playing and he didn't seem sick at all. But still, I knew it was my fault for yelling at him like that and using that threat about Daddy to shame him into working when he didn't feel up to it. I preached myself a sermon all the way to Junior's. When I got there, Junior was laying under the truck in the driveway. Wrenches and car parts was scattered on the ground by his legs. I started yelling him the minute I seen him. Junior, I need your help right this minute. And the truck too. You got to take Bobby to the doctor's. Junior came sliding out from under the truck and said, what's the matter? Can it wait? I got to put this thing back together or we ain't going nowhere. Junior Bledsoe, why are you taking my daddy's truck apart? He said you could use it so you could take Mama places, not take it apart. I started beating on his chest. Whoa, girl, what's gotten into you? Junior grabbed my hands and held me back from him. Bobby's got polio. He's got to get to the emergency hospital in Hickory. Oh, Lordy, said Junior. This truck ain't going nowhere for a while. We better see if the Hinkle sisters can take you. He ran and got his bicycle then. I could hardly keep up with him on the dirt road to the Hinkles. I knew he was in trouble the minute we got there because the Hinkle sisters' car was not in the garage behind the brick house. They're not home, I said. I just knew Bobby was going to die while we rode around looking for someone to take us to the hospital. Then we'll use their telephone, said Junior. We hurried to the back door and went inside. Anybody home? Yelled Junior as he ran through the kitchen. The Hinkle sisters' kitchen was just like always. The countertops and stoves were spotless. The plants on the windowsill were cheerful. Everything was in its place and quiet as midnight. We kept going into the dining room. Junior grabbed a heavy black telephone off the little table so fast the cord dug a white lace dolly into the floor. I sunk into the chair beside the telephone table. Junior dialed the operator. I need Dr. Johnson, he said. The clock on the wall went tick, 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 bragging on how much precious time was slipping by. Finally, Junior handed me the telephone. A lady asked me how she could help me. I told her about Bobby collapsing in the garden, but it seemed like she couldn't understand. Slow down, honey, she said. But I knew we didn't have time to waste. I told her what happened to Bobby and how we didn't have a car to take him to the doctor's. She put Dr. Johnson on the telephone, and I had to tell it all over again. He said he would send the ambulance. I gave the receiver to Junior so he could give directions. I put my head down on the telephone table, and my tears run down over the numbers on the dial. He's only 4 years old, I moaned, and I made him work even when he said he was sick. Oh, Daddy, I should have let him play. The next thing I knew, Junior was pushing a glass of water at me. Here, Aunt Faye, he said, drink this water and calm down. Everything will be all right. But I knew he was just saying that to get me through. I knew nothing was ever going to be all right again.